Kia ora, I'm Iria Makamo. The relationship between New Zealand and Australia is supposed to be special, built on the spirit of the Anzacs. In fact, a poll out this week in Australia says we're their best friend in the world. But how tight are we? Are we really Trans-Tasman brothers and sisters? Kiwis living across the ditch say no. They say they're treated like guest workers, while Aussies here are living the good life. Is the Anzac spirit alive and well, or are we heading for a divorce? Here's Mark Kreisel.
Aussie rules. Well, it does at the famous Melbourne cricket ground. As good a place as any to gauge the state of the Australian-New Zealand relationship.
I love Kiwis, they're great fun. We're all Americans.
There's a special bond forged between Australians and New Zealanders. That'll be there forever.
The Anzacs, a bloody bond of brotherhood forged on the battlefields, honed by trade and the free movement of Kiwis and Aussies across each other's borders.
The New Zealanders I know contribute here to our lifestyle and fit in very well.
They seem to like us, but do they really? How would you characterise the state of the Trans-Tasman relationship?
She's rooted, mate.
And this is why. On either side of Anzac Day this year, the Australian government dropped a bomb on the 650,000 Kiwis who choose to live there.
It's kicking the guts, really. You know, we're either welcome here or we're not.
Reagan, use a plane.
Without warning, it became even tougher for Kiwis to become Australian citizens and prohibitively expensive to send their kids to university.
This is probably the worst thing I've ever seen Australia do since the underarm incident.
We haven't believed it, and that's a disappointing finish.
Mike, Helen, Mia, Regan and Dominic. When the Silich family moved here to Melbourne from Auckland 8 years ago, they were issued the standard special category visa for New Zealanders at the border. How long did you think you were going to live here for?
Well, for me, it was permanent. We were moving here and establishing our family here.
Becoming Aussies?
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose that's true, yeah. But never forget our New Zealand heritage.
Kiwiana may be all through the house, but Helen's mum and dad have moved over too, and the Siliches now call Australia home.
Okay, this is a bus that we've done a fairly major conversion on.
Mike runs his own business, fitting out mobile homes and buses.
We've had the seats recovered, you know, reversing camera fitted.
Helen works in the office.
You have to bring it back and I'll have to do a warranty on it.
The rest of the staff are Australian.
Wolf, is that 12 volt or 240?
240.
We're paying tax, we make money and we employ Australians who pay tax.
Oldest son Regan is a police officer in rural Victoria. Dominic's a Melbourne barista and 17-year-old Mia's at high school, making plans to study science at nearby Monash University.
I'll be the first person in our family to finish uni.
But the Aussie government, overnight, changed the rules. Kiwi students who've been in Australia less than 10 years will no longer be treated as domestic students and will have to pay international fees. Now Mia cannot afford to study in Australia.
The course that she was wanting to do, Bachelor of Science, was $9,000 a year. Now it's gone to $34,000 a year.
What are you going to do?
We're looking at Mia moving back to New Zealand.
Remember, Mia's lived in Australia since she was 9. She found out as she was studying for her final exams.
It was a massive shock to me. I'd planned my life here. I'd chosen out unis. I'd got friends here and just my whole life's here now. Come on, girls. Come on.
Hardest of all will be leaving her family. The Siliches are tight-knit and she's particularly close to mum, Helen. What is your biggest worry?
Oh, Mia being alone and not having any immediate family in New Zealand and just financially surviving.
Don't be sad.
Yeah.
The most recent figures show there are more than 12,000 New Zealanders living in Australia already studying at a tertiary level. But those coming next may have to completely uproot their lives. Like Mia, they may have to leave their families and return to New Zealand to get a university education. Is what we're seeing here discrimination?
Well, I suppose it is discrimination. The people are here, they're paying taxes, they're contributing to society, they're allowed to stay here permanently, but they're just not being treated equally with other people in that same situation.
Dr Tim Gasson is the chair of AusKiwi, a voluntary organisation advocating for Kiwis in Australia. What nationality are you?
I'm an Australian.
So why are you looking after New Zealanders?
Well, essentially my wife's a New Zealander, and I suppose over many years we've sort of seen the absurdities of being a New Zealander in Australia, that how the rules keep changing, and I've known many people who've been affected by these rules.
The Australian government started clamping down on Kiwis in 2001, making them ineligible for most benefits or a pathway to citizenship unless they obtained an expensive permanent visa.
Where Kiwis have become an easy target for governments that want to plug holes in their budget.
Australia's not the lucky country it used to be. The economy's in big trouble.
We've got a $40 billion deficit.
Australian Senator David Leyonhjelm is sympathetic to the plight of Kiwis, but says don't take it personally.
I think the government is just counting pennies, and family are just casualties in that environment.
The Liberal Democrat leader says he questioned the government on their education bombshell, but had no response.
I think you're probably suffering from too much familiarity. Perhaps you should declare war on Australia a bit and get noticed.
Kiwis in Australia already feel like war's been declared on them. Their rights have eroded year by year since 2001. Why should the Australian government give New Zealanders special treatment?
We've had this freedom of movement for a couple of hundred years, essentially. This idea that people should be able to move freely, take advantage of opportunities, advance their lives. And if Australia's going to start changing the rules on that, that undermines the whole relationship.
Kiwis can move and live there, but can't vote. Take the Siliches. They run a business, employ Aussies, pay tax, but don't get a say in the government.
And here we are, being taxed. It's something like $5 billion a year is coming from Kiwis working here, and we've got no representation, and we're having our rights stripped away. It just doesn't seem fair.
Regan Silich can be a policeman in Victoria, but he's not allowed to join the army or be a civil servant.
Only state, not federal.
17-year-old Mia can't get subsidised travel like her schoolmates, and they're excluded from federal disability insurance despite paying into it.
If, per se, I was to break a leg at work, I would be unable to get paid for that.
The Siliches could get all those rights if they became Australian citizens, but that's about to get harder and more expensive.
We basically, for 4 years, we have to earn over $53,400 a year. So you can prove over a continuous 4-year period that you can earn money and support yourself.
Problem with that is Mike hasn't paid himself a salary for years.
We just kept pouring money back into the business to grow it. Employing Australians, paying tax, doing all the right things.
That people's sense of security has just disappeared after these latest changes. There's a feeling that, well, once they've done that, what's to stop them doing anything else? And I think a lot of people are reconsidering their futures in Australia.
I just live kind of in a state of constant anxiety, thinking what's going to happen next.
I'm starting to look at myself and go, I've made a mistake. I've made a bad decision for my family by moving here.
That's a tough thing to admit. When we come back, is it time to call it quits on the Trans-Tasman relationship?
Are we still brothers? Yep, but different. Maybe same dad, different mums.
And the Australians living the good life in New Zealand. So how's the serenity?
Lovely.
Great feeling. There are around 62,000 Australian citizens living amongst us. So how's the serenity?
Serenity's fantastic.
David, Kylie, Ashley, Lachlan and Charlotte. The Craig family of Sydney and New Zealand residents. For the past 4 years they've been living the good life on a lifestyle block near Hamilton. Could you have had this in Sydney?
No, absolutely. Well, sorry, yes, you could, but we would have been quite a long way out of Sydney.
Charlotte's high school is just down the road. Mum Kylie is an event manager and Dad David's an assistant vice-chancellor at nearby Waikato University.
Sort of fell in love not only with the university but the region, and I could really see us as a family fitting in here really well.
Lachlan and Ashley are at Waikato too, studying.
How'd you go on that assignment the other day?
Oh, pretty good, not too bad.
Lachlan and Ashley pay the same fees as Kiwi students, about $6,000 a year.
For the most part, it didn't feel that different overall. I just felt like I was put in as just another New Zealand citizen.
Remember, the Australian government has just introduced huge university fee hikes for Kiwis living there. Kiwis like Mia Silich in Melbourne, who now can't afford to study in Australia.
It couldn't have come at a worse time when she's studying for her final exams. She's got to rethink her whole future.
Meanwhile, the Craig family and other Australians living here get pretty much most of the rights Kiwis are now shut out of in Australia. They can vote.
What happens insofar as the leadership of the country affects us just as much as it affects everyone else, and so, you know, the ability for us to make a contribution to that is something that we appreciate.
By next year, they'll be eligible for New Zealand citizenship.
It would certainly be something we think about, yeah.
But without being citizens, the Craigs still have access to benefits, student travel concessions, can work for the public service, or even join our army if they want to. You don't get more Anzac than that.
It really was very seamless for us. It's sort of like sometimes in the first year I kept forgetting I was in another country.
Kiwis in Australia aren't feeling the same love.
We're kind of the Mexicans in California. You know, we're invited here to work, but we're not really wanted. That's the impression that the government's giving to us.
As an Australian, I actually find this a little bit embarrassing. We're made to feel incredibly welcome in this country and treated extremely well, and you know, I'd like to think that Australians make New Zealanders feel just as welcome, but it would appear that
perhaps not.
Not so much.
When you look at it through the eyes of the Aussies and Kiwis living in each other's countries, it's hard not to think the Trans-Tasman relationship is very one-sided in favour of Australia. Take the latest crackdown on citizenship and university fees. The announcement completely blindsided the New Zealand government.
We're pretty unhappy about it. There's now significant uncertainty about the Australian attitude towards that traditional arrangement.
Bill English hastily dispatched his Foreign Minister Jerry Brownlee to Sydney for an explanation from his Aussie counterpart Julie Bishop. Mr Brownlee appeared far less gung-ho after the meeting.
The warmth of our discussions today reaffirms the deep friendship between our countries.
It was an embarrassment to the country. Coming over here, what we saw on the news here is just appalling. Why bother coming?
Amazing, all right. But Jerry Brownlee says he told Julie Bishop New Zealand was extremely disappointed that it had been left out of the loop.
If I'd gone over there and taken a big fight to the Australians, then I think I'd have let down pretty much everybody on this side of the Tasman who needs the investment we have here, who more than that needs the trade that 75% of our exporters have into Australia for their jobs in this country.
So what's more important here, trade or people?
Unless you have a strong economy, you're not in much of a position to advantage the social side of people's lives, the social requirements of people's lives.
And don't expect any tit-for-tat retaliation from the New Zealand government for Aussies living here.
Well, that's not a question that's on the agenda at the present time.
But there are those who say it's time to strike back.
We still see Aussies as being like Kiwis, but Australia sees Kiwis as damn foreigners that have to be controlled.
When Aussie Malcolm was the immigration minister in the smoke-filled Muldoon cabinet of the late 1970s, you didn't need a passport to enter either country. That's how he got here from his Melbourne birthplace. He's not called Aussie for nothing.
I came here and I believed in the Trans-Tasman agreement, and I've spent all my adult life here, and I'm proud to be a Kiwi.
Australia, says Aussie Malcolm, no longer holds up its end of the Trans-Tasman relationship. Time, he says, for New Zealand to get out with its dignity intact.
I'd suggest we start by saying Australia's like the rest of the world. You want to come for a holiday, 3-month, easy, visa, no problem, come and enjoy Queenstown, spend your money. You want to come and live here, work, send your kids to our schools, our universities, commit crimes and go to our prisons, then you have to apply. Pay the fee, let us look you over, let us check your qualifications, do you have a job, do we want you? And if we don't, you can't come.
Are we still brothers?
Yep, but different. Maybe same dad, different mums.
Hang in there, say Australian politicians. We're still mates.
There is no animosity towards New Zealand at all. I don't see any tendency to say, oh, we don't like New Zealand anymore. That there's no feeling of that. It's more just a matter of, oh, we forgot about you, oops.
If the Trans-Tasman relationship, the various commercial harmonisations that we've had over the last 20 or 30 years are going to mean anything, they have to be backed up with some of the people-to-people stuff as well. And look, they agree that there's work to do there.
The Kiwi Silich family just bought a new house in Melbourne, so they're staying for now, but they worry about what might come next. And they're going to have to say goodbye to daughter Mia, who'll have to return to New Zealand to study.
Growing up, what I saw was a real freedom between the two countries, both trade-wise and people-wise. It's falling back to just commercial realities now. There's no feeling for the people that are involved.
Advance Australia, it just doesn't seem fair.
I expect a Kiwi to think twice before coming to Australia.
We've moved our whole entire family over, and I just sort of am left thinking, God, what did we do?
I felt Australian, and I saw my future here, and that has changed now.
So what do you think? Should Australians living in New Zealand be treated the way we are over there? Go to our Facebook page and join the discussion.